Hello, hello, everybody. Well, this is Ed with another episode of Call Me Mr. Broadstreet. So this week, what I'm doing is I am attending the Fest for Beatles fans, which should be a lot of fun. You'll get to see some content from that. So as a nice treat, I've got an interview with Cliff from Lesotho, definitely local Boston band that's been getting a lot of recognition, definitely within metal. And we're going to talk some music. We're going to talk some influences. I get to know Cliff a little bit, and of course, talk some Beatles, solo Beatles, since that's what we do on the channel. So Cliff and I did meet through the workplace. I won't mention exactly where we work, but we did meet through that. And Cliff, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes,
What's
so
yours?
I'm Cliff, and I play the bass in an instrumental post rock band or post metal band, depending on the genre that you fancy, in a band called Lesotho, which is actually named after the African kingdom. If you ask for influences about the name, you may get different answers. I just like to say it's the highest low point on the planet. um, that said, Ed, thank you for having me and inviting me to be a part of this. This is really cool. It's
No, an
always
honor.
I
Thank
always
you.
relish the opportunity to talk shop and talk music with some friends. So this is awesome. Thank you.
No, no, of course, no. I appreciate it. It's an honor to have you on, sir. I know we talked about it and trying to coordinate schedules and everything. Is life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans, as John Lennon once sang. So yeah, you actually kind of answered, one of the questions off the bat, and how did you decide to name the group Lesotho? So I think I got the answer for that. I know you're.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If you ask each member of the band, you sort of get a different flavor of nerdy response, if you will. Lesotho actually is home to the highest low point on Earth, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that the lowest point above sea level is higher than anywhere else on this planet.
Wow.
Um, According to our drummer, who is a super gaming nerd, he loves Pokemon. And supposedly there is a character within those games known as Lesotho, and he thought the name sounded cool and ran it by us. At which point I pointed out that it was a country. Our guitarist influenced the name based off of just Africa, just the continent of Africa. He wanted to use a locale as the name, and so there we were. So the middle of the Venn diagram sort of converged, and we came up with the name.
It's good. It's definitely good when you get a synergy like that. We get kind of okay. It could have a couple, and a couple different meanings, to each person. No, that's awesome. That's totally cool. A good little backstory as we'll kind of dig in a little bit of course, with the band, with other things. First, we're definitely going to start with some, Beatles and solo Beatles stuff. So I know we were, talking a little bit earlier today. So I just want to kind of, have this as an open question, and some of it might even just be, throwing out one word. And if you want to give any type of answers, that's based off of the 1974 John Lennon interview where they asked him one word, and it's like free association, a little bit of that, a little bit of questions. So we'll kind of go around the around the dial, as it were. And so first question is just some favorite kind of Beatles or solo Beatles, songs or videos or projects that you may have heard over time.
Yes. So my first actual exposure to the Beatles, and most people get a kick out of this when I bring it up to them and they enjoy the music, was back in middle school. I was part of the Gates Middle School, located in Situate, Massachusetts, men's choir. And one of the songs that we were able to sing in our first sort of, or in my first experience with the choir, was Ticket to Ride. And to this day, I would probably say that it is my favorite Beatles song. Um, Also, being a hormonal 13-year-old at the time, and having a sort of song about longing for a woman, and sort of having the ups and the downs of a relationship. Obviously being precocious, I hadn't had much exposure to this, but the lyrics always kind of stuck home. She said that living with me was bringing her down. The girl that's driving me mad is running away. And lo and
Yes.
behold, I'm sure that we've all had our experiences, in and around those types of situations. So that was probably my first exposure to the Beatles, and as such, that it, in addition to the musicianship, the nostalgia factor is huge for me with that one. In terms of the other elements of their catalog, you know, and you and I had discussed this, I kind of intimated this earlier.
Yep.
I tend to kind of go towards the heavier side, you know, given the fact that I do play in a metal band. I mean, I enjoy metal music. Shout out to Black Sabbath. Um, you know, so songs like Helter Skelter, She's So Heavy, even Revolution to a degree, you know, where you have these songs that just have so much gusto, and they may not necessarily be, I guess, what we would colloquially think of in 2024 as heavy music, as in like cacophonous and a lot of things going on, but it was certainly loud and bold, which was something that I appreciated, especially given that most people would consider a group like that probably the first real true rock band. And pretty much everything that came after has some sort of influence. Everything that I do currently as a musician, and most people I know, probably traces back to that era, you know, of the early to mid 60s when, you know, people were starting to plug instruments into amplifiers and turn them up and come up with more than just jingles or bops, if you will, like they did in the 50s. To sort of be a part of that evolution this far on, especially going on 60 plus years later, it's really cool.
Excellent. Yeah, you know, you bring up a good point because I think, you know, you get a lot of folks, you know, with heavy metal, and I mean, especially even remember on VH1, Eddie Trunk used to do some sort of show, if I remember correctly. It
Yes.
was you know the show. Yeah, I'm forgetting the name of the show,
Yeah.
but you
So,
know what I'm
was it
talking
like
about.
mid to late 90s, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, mid to late '90s, and then a little bit in the maybe mid 2000s on VH1 Classic. But he did like a live show. And the thing is, not enough people mention, at least in my view, Helter Skelter as a building block of heavy metal. Sure, you're going to mention things
Oh,
like you
for
said,
sure.
like Black Sabbath, you know, certainly an influence, or I guess maybe Deep Purple to an extent. But,
Mhm.
you know, that song Helter Skelter, just, you know, with Paul hearing from The Who, oh, yeah, we did the dirtiest rock song. He goes, oh, really? Just decides to plug it. I mean, for Paul, known for a lot more ballads and pop and stuff like that, not exclusively, but I think that's definitely a building block. Or like you said, I Want You, She's So Heavy. Great song. These are great songs from the catalog. Revolution, you know, especially the single version with Paul and George kind of convincing John, hey, let's speed up the lyrics a little bit. Let's speed up the tempo on this particular version. 100% agreed. You know, definitely the building blocks.
Oh yeah, for sure. Particularly Helter Skelter. You know, a lot of the sort of darker connotations, Charles Manson at the time, and things like that. Um, you know, even though there isn't sort of anything directly related, at least in my opinion, um, you know, it's really cool to see that sort of link to sort of the. I wouldn't call it necessarily occult, but maybe counterculture is probably the best way I'd describe it. To me, that was really sort of fulfilling and interesting to explore when going back and listening.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's, you know, it's funny when you hear about the influence of the song, the way that I've always understood it when Paul gave interviews, you know, later on, especially after the horrible Manson thing, you know, not condoning that for obvious reasons, but that, you know, people can hear it one way, and Paul's like, oh yeah, it's about a slide. It's about, you know, get it to the bottom and the top of the slide and go down.
Right.
But just the heavy sound of it and the interpretation of it. And you're right. I think counterculture, you know, obviously the notwithstanding the obviously horrible murders that happened under with Charles Manson and, you know, various folks involved with that, but definitely more that counterculture, like you said, very heavy sound, which as they were expanding their palette from the earlier stuff, from the Ticket to Ride, which wonderful song, by the way, wonderful, beautiful song, great guitar
Absolutely.
work on that too. You know, what about some of the, yeah, is there any, some of the solo stuff that you ever got to hear once you kind of got into, uh, you know, into performing, let's say Ticket to Ride? Was there any point where you said, oh, maybe let me check this out, let me check out this other?
So I would say that Lennon is probably, you know, who I listen to the most out of between the group. To
Mhm.
be quite honest with you, I'm not sure, you know, only because, you know, me being only 35 years old, you know, I'm not understanding who was more popular or what caught on a little bit more. Obviously, Paul still being around, but Lennon was definitely a fixture of the music that I listened to in my youth. You know, being a product of the mid to late 80s, understanding like his influence on everything that came before and also after his death, his untimely death. There isn't a particular album, I would say. I would say it's a sort of amalgamation of different singles and songs that he had put out over time, that I had grown accustomed to, for sure.
Yeah. So like, what are some of those, singles and songs and things that you stick out for you?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of like one that definitely pops off the top of the head. Um, Sorry, that was one I wasn't prepared for in terms of solo stuff. Um, I know he has a song called "Mother," if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
and
Plastic Ono Band. Yes.
yes, and "Working Class Hero." That's the one that was escaping my head. "Working Class Hero," particularly the lyricism on that. Particularly having a family who kind of has a blue collar type of history. To immigrants coming from different countries across the world, coming here to the U.S., and being a product of that myself, I could definitely appreciate that sort of lyricism. There's a particular line he has in that song, if I'm not mistaken. If I could very quickly pull it up here.
Yeah, go for it.
Pardon me. Yes. So again, me being a young person, not being able to interpret this fully up until adulthood, but keep you doped with religion and sex and TV, and you think you're so clever and classless and free, but you're still effing peasants as far as I can see. A working class hero is something to be.
Yes, especially the effing, which I don't want to say the full word on here. Obviously,
Right.
kids are looking on, but we definitely get what that means. So that is a very powerful sentiment, and to be honest, I hadn't thought of it that way. I think for me, gravitating more towards the latter stuff of Lennon, more the Walls and Bridges or Double Fantasy as he's coming back,
Right.
in out of retirement, quote unquote, even though he was making demos, but I could see where that would be a very powerful song for you, for your,
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny because little anecdotal things like that, especially as a youth, an impressionable one at that, it definitely sort of influences your outlook on certain things, whether it's art, media, television, and things like that. And also considering the nature of his death and what his family life was like at the time. It causes you to kind of look a little bit deeper, not only into the lyrics themselves, but into yourself, into oneself. Where do you find yourself within this relativity of what this man is trying to say through this art, through this piece of art? It's amazing how things can stick and sort of be timeless. Here we are talking about it. I mean, geez, I'm probably 40 plus years at this point after the fact. And that's really cool. That's really gratifying as a musician. That's something that I can relate to, knowing that what I create, in a sense, will live forever, far beyond my time. And it's cool to sort of have that as a sort of legacy, if you will, or as part of one's legacy, whether it's a reputation that you may have with family or friends, or certain things that you might do. The creation of something that is pleasing to the ear and that can stick with somebody, that's a gift. It truly is a gift. And I would say, at least, again, given my very limited exposure to the Beatles solo work, that definitely influenced me a lot and holds fast to this day to me.
Excellent. No, definitely a seminal work, and definitely breaking away from sort of the Beatles and sort of the Beatles past, even though it would sort of come full circle later on. But no, definitely that's an amazing pick. That's an amazing song, and especially again for for me as a Gen X. I think earlier in my life I could relate to it a little bit more. Now in my later 40s, I may gravitate towards other stuff, but I definitely can see the sort of the the coming into oneself, and that's a powerful song. Those are some great picks. Those are great picks, my friend. Well, let me go on to just a couple questions, maybe a little bit more related to the band as well. And like I said, we'll kind of go in and out full circle. So I think you were alluding to this a little bit, but how did you and your band meet? So how did you end up meeting? What was that like? How did that sort of come together?
So honestly, it's funny because this is a pretty common question for us, and the story, it's the same every time. It was just pure happenstance, to be quite honest with you. That was sort of on set by the COVID-19 pandemic. So originally, I actually, well, geez, as of 4 years ago on this day, I probably have picked up a bass guitar maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. Um, and so at the time, and I actually do still play music with a band called CAZADOR, for which I am the drummer percussionist and also do some background vocals. At the time, we were rehearsing in a very sort of modest warehouse in Norwood. And because of the pandemic, obviously with people being on lockdown and minimizing risk of exposure and what have you, we couldn't really meet as often. However, one of the guitar players and I, we still did continue to meet, obviously still testing and following precautions, making sure to socially distance, etc. And he and I would just kind of bounce ideas off of each other in the interim while we couldn't meet as a full band. During that time, the drummer for Lesotho, whose name is Zach Ganshert, he just happened to bump into us one day and mentioned to us that he played the drums himself and had heard us rehearsing in the building. At which point, we just invited him essentially to come and hang out and maybe jam a few songs with us, where I would just pick up another guitar with our guitar player, Kyle, and we would just sort of just shed or vamp and just see what happened, just for fun. A few months later, we had 5 songs written, and we're pretty much preparing to record an EP in the midst of the pandemic. So essentially, it was a combination of the pandemic and really just our common ground and common passion for creation and creating music. None of us can sing very well, so we decided that it was going to be an instrumental project. And eventually, I did pick up a bass instead of just my guitar player's backup guitar, just to kind of fill out the whole 3-piece. And eventually, I learned different elements of just playing bass in a band. Being a drummer, I do sort of understand a little bit of what it is like to carry a rhythm section on one side. So to sort of learn the other side was a bit of an adjustment for me, especially given the nature of the instrument, moving from having 2 sticks and, using sort of a more sensory, physical way of playing music and transferring that to something that inherently requires you to have a sense of melody and a sense of understanding composition. Was quite difficult at first, to be quite honest, but it was something that I grew an affinity towards as I learned. And eventually I built a signal chain, bought an amplifier, bought a speaker cabinet, and now I'm such a dork when it comes to certain things, when it comes to playing the bass, that it's sort of gratifying in a totally different way than playing the drums were and still are to me to this day. I do still play in CAZADOR, and we're active, but not as active as Lesotho. But to be able to explore a different side of my creative lens is really cool. It's a really gratifying thing. I'm sort of a baby at it, even though I had been playing drums for some time before learning the bass. So yeah, we had come together through the pandemic, recorded an EP, and off we went, essentially.
No, excellent. That's really that's really good and really fascinating. Bass playing did work out for another member of a very famous band who happens to be left-handed. Don't know who that could be, but no, it's always
yeah. And it's funny. I love Rickenbackers, and Paul definitely rocks with those Rickenbackers. Those Rickies are great, and I did find it interesting that he is a left-handed bass player and plays on his offhand, because that's something I can never do. I feel like there's a story behind that as to why he may have learned that way. I don't know if he's actually left-handed or not.
Because I am, yes, I can tell you 1,000% he actually is left-handed.
Phenomenal.
One thing in common. Yeah, I do wish he'd break out the Rickenbacker more. He's really gone more with the Hofner, and I understand maybe because of the heaviness of the bass. I don't play an instrument myself, but I guess just the actual weight of it.
Oh yeah. The Ricky is heavy. It is, but I want it. It's so heavy.
Good one. I like that. Oh my goodness.
Sorry, that was a layup. I couldn't help it.
No, that was, hey, you know what? That's what we're here for. This is having fun and, It's got the puns could go on forever. We could spend the next 8 hours on puns. I love it. I love it. Well, let me see. All right, so kind of going a little bit deeper, and you've probably been asked this question, I'm sure. Um, don't worry, it's not going to be about your favorite food or anything. But what's kind of your favorite part of doing live shows? I know that you probably do a lot of live shows with your band, with both your bands, really. What's one of your favorite parts, or a couple of your favorite parts in front of a live audience?
So for me, it's really feeding off of the energy of the audience, regardless of the size of it. I mean, we've played sold out 500 cat venue shows to, private basement shows with 30 people, and just feeding off of the different types of energy that the room can provide you. Especially being an instrumental band where we focus a lot on texture and different sort of movements with the music. That's something I definitely like to project, and very much in a sensory sort of point of view, a sensory lens, if you will. I kind of intimated this earlier with playing the drums, whereas with playing the bass in particular with Lesotho, you're the way that I sort of think of it is almost like pushing air, pushing those low frequencies and making people sort of feel that in their chest, coupled with the guitar and coupled with the drums and coupled with the flow of the music. That's something that's very important to me in the creative process, and being able to convey that in a live setting, in a room full of however many people. That's pretty much why I do it, honestly. It's not necessarily even for the attention or for anything else other than being able to sort of share that experience with others. That's really what does it for me.
Great, great. No, well, I guess we'll go ahead and flip the question on its head a little bit. What's kind of maybe the least favorite, or some of the least favorite aspects of doing a live show?
If there's loading in. Anybody who's ever played drums or perhaps played a guitar or bass and has a large cabinet or shelves to haul into a venue, particularly one with stairs and no elevator, knows the feeling, especially as an independent musician where we don't have roadies to do these things for us. So going in, setting up, making sure everything is essentially in line, so that you're set to perform, and sort of taking that woodpecker in the back of your head and making sure that you can relax. And it's like, all right, everything's set up the way that we need it to be. That for me is probably the least favorite part, is the preamble to the show. Once we're ready to go, that's another experience. But in terms of like showing up, preparing, making sure that you do your line check and making sure that everything is EQ'd. Sometimes you got to put on your pants to go and do these things. As fun as it is and as awesome as it is, it really is kind of the way that I would put it, interrupting myself, is sort of, any artist understands this too, is that you kind of suffer for your art in a way. You're always sacrificing, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's just dedication to something else that you may have going on in life. When you're sharing your art and projecting it, bringing it to an audience, there's something on the other side of that. I mean, not to say that there isn't anything gratifying about it. It's supremely gratifying, but there is sort of a bit of a sacrifice and a bit of a suffering, if you will, for it.
Yeah, no, I could see that, especially whether it's, like I said, like it's yourself, a 3-piece band, you've one instrument each, you've got to be in tune, or certainly up to big bands like like one of my favorites, Rolling Stones or Paul McCartney or Ringo or whomever. Name any big bands, past, present. That's a lot of setup, a lot of time to prep for the show, to give the audience what they.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can only imagine setting up for Woodstock back in '69. Oh my goodness gracious, like especially with that sort of being like a more rebellious sort of endeavor at the time. Knowing that everybody that was there was sort of in on it, meaning that they all had to kind of, put in some work to make it happen. Much more work than, we do in modern times, at least, where we see bands go on tour for months at a time, it seems. So.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Or even I can even think of maybe my personal favorite concert, Live Aid. With both Philadelphia and London, coordinating that, plus coordinating the satellite link up. I mean, now we take it for granted. We could look at any clip anywhere, anytime. Back in 1985, not so much. And I remember they were saying, "Oh yeah, they want people to get rid of the footage." I'm glad they didn't for the most part. I'm glad they kept the footage,
Oh yeah,
uh,
yeah,
for,
same,
for
same.
different
Because
reasons.
otherwise, I wouldn't get to experience it. Like so. It's good to be able to look at those archival things and see things like Woodstock and all those different festivals, Live Aid, particularly the Queen performance from that, which is legendary. I
Yes.
mean, to sort of see that and have it influence and have a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody, which came out a few years back, come out and have that emulated on the big screen, and to see the real version and see how moving and powerful something like that can be. I could, to sort of be there at least as much as I can be through a screen is really cool.
It's funny you mentioned Bohemian Rhapsody. Going off script a little bit, there was a good One Night with Queen, I believe, is the tribute band. If you ever get to catch them,
Oh yes, I've heard of them. Yes, they're
yeah,
quite famous actually. Yes.
yeah, they're very good. I mean, the other three guys are just wearing the regular street clothes or rock clothes, whatever. The guy who's Freddie, you swear it's Freddie right there, no
Absolutely.
doubt
Like,
about it.
yeah, he could probably get paid as an impersonator. Like he probably could.
Amazing show, amazing, highly recommended. But I know you've definitely, I'm sure, a lot of things you've heard of. So so this kind of goes to the next question actually. So good little synchronicity we've got going. Wait, synchronicity? No, that's the police. But speaking of famous police fans, I had to, yeah, I had to do the same thing. I'm full of, trust me, I can be full of bad jokes myself. Oh, trust me. So if you could invite, let's say, 10 musicians to a dinner, it could be alive or not. Who would you invite?
Let's see. Lemmy Kilmister. Definitely one of my favorite bass players. Definitely influenced me in terms of how I approach the instrument, especially being so new to it. Motorhead was something that I grew to appreciate. Mainstream, everybody kind of knew the songs like Ace of Spades and knew his voice. But as a bassist, Lemmy Kilmister, definitely a huge influence for me. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Geezer Butler of Black Sabbath. Still with us, and amazing bass player. And honestly, I have to include Paul in that group. Notice how I'm sort of keeping up with my fellow keepers of the low end here. He's definitely one who I would love to cross paths with and just pick his brain as far as musicianship and understanding and trying to absorb a little bit of wisdom in terms of longevity and the essence of creating this type of music and having it be so influential and what that means to him, and maybe telling him what it means to me, and sharing that and bouncing that back and forth. I'm trying to think of other musicians off the top of my head. There is another bass player from a bit more of a modern band called Botch. He also plays bass in another instrumental band, which is a huge influence for us, called Russian Circles. His name is Brian Cook. Highly recommend checking out his work with either Russian Circles or These Arms Are Snakes, or he's most prominent for a band called Botch, which recently reunited, and I got the chance to see in concert after 20 or so years of them not playing a show together. So that was a really cool experience. Trying to think of who else. What am I at? Am I at 4, 5, 7?
You're 4 or 5. I mean, it could be any. I mean, I just figure
Right.
10. It's like sometimes you like to do 10. It could be 5, 10, whatever number you can think of. I mean, not. Boy, we could expand it to thousands of people, I'm sure. But,
Right. Oh yeah, I could go on all day on this topic. Right. Just to sit down and either have dinner or have a drink with. But I'm trying to think of more sort of people who might not be with us. Jaco Pastorius is another good one. I'm not sure if you've ever listened to Weather Report and his work with them. Phenomenal bassist. I was into him even before I got into the instrument. Basically, all of the members of Deep Purple would be a cool experience. The same with Pink Floyd, Us and Them. It was such an influential song on me as a youth. The Nirvana would also be a good one. 90s grunge, Pearl Jam. I'm just listing influences at this point. Yeah. These are all sort of foundational artists for me, in addition to the more modern things as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't include like bands like Botch, Russian Circles. My favorite band in the world is a band named Thrice. who formed, I believe, in the late 90s and grew prominent in the early to mid 2000s. They were sort of like my middle school, high school, precocious growing up band. And to this day, they're still making music, and they've had their sort of own evolution where they started off as more of like kind of a metal punk band, and now they just sort of make rock songs, which are catchy and really cool and have hooks and are more secular sounding than anything that they would put out back then. To sort of grow up with them is really cool. And another, again, I'd be remiss if I did not include one of my favorite bands from Boston. One of my favorite bands from Boston, Converge. They are a major influence in terms of the heavy music scene to this day. They have been making ears bleed and blowing people's minds since the mid 90s, and they are still doing it to this day as guys in their 40s and 50s with not an ounce of energy lost. So Converge, definitely shout out to all those guys. Love them.
You know, you've given me quite a lot to listen to and to link to, and I'm always good to, to kind of expand my horizons too. I don't think it's ever, for me at least personally, this channel is never about, just being stuck in the past. As much as I can enjoy it, as much as I can enjoy classic rock, it's always about, the other, I think John Lennon once described it in 1980 with New Wave being joining the ocean of music. And there is a big ocean of music out there, from
Absolutely
modern pop to classic rock to classical to jazz to everything in between. So
yeah.
you definitely given me a lot to look back and to link to, especially when we're linking to everything, and of course, obviously including your band there. So yeah, I think we covered another question I was going to ask: early influences, and how did you decide to play bass? That was one that you kind of got covered with that. So besides drums and bass, what other instruments do you play, or is that kind of your primary instruments that you play?
So yes, in adulthood, these are my primary instruments. Although my origins as a musician, or just with music in general, was singing in the children's choir at church, growing up at St. Joseph's in Hyde Park, Mass. That was sort of my first experience, just sort of understanding music, understanding how to read music and sing it properly, understanding what notes meant, pitch, things like that. And that sort of evolved into me joining the chorus at school and the men's choir at school. And eventually in high school, once you're sort of in chorus and you can pick electives, one of the electives I had the pleasure of taking was guitar workshop. And, of course, at the time, I'm like, all right, well, I sing in the chorus and, there's guitar workshop. Girls like it when guys sing and play guitar, right? So maybe we'll combine those things. And they're off we went. College, it took a long break from music. I essentially just worked through the entire process, sort of got my career set up, and then revisited it in my 20s. Same for even drums. I mean, I didn't pick up a drumstick intentionally until I was 25 years old. So I'm going on 10 years at this point, and same with the bass. I'm very nascent on each of these things, but the passion's always been there. The drive has always been there, and the sort of yearning for creativity has always been there for sure.
I like that. I like that. Is there an instrument that you would love to learn how to play or become more proficient in?
One thing I would love to learn how to play is the piano. Now, I know Paul, he is a phenomenal piano player. And that is something that I envy in terms of multi-instrumentalists, because I have the drums where I'm using my hands and my feet, and I have the bass where I'm using my fingers and my hands still, but the piano specifically, again, using the hands and the feet, but almost in a more, I guess, tactile way, if you will. And I feel like there's a lot of dynamic. I mean, you can listen to full concertos with only a piano, just one instrument, and it can move you and be sweeping and just be all encompassing in terms of like the scope of it. So that's something I would definitely love to learn. I'm hoping to get the opportunity to do that at some point with my little one. I have a 3-year-old toddler here at home. So I'm hoping that some of my musical pathology will take to her, and she'll be motivated, and maybe I'll push the piano on her, but I have a feeling it'll be the drums.
Well, the drums are very basic, very kind of, as we first learn and everything. No, that's absolutely, that's wonderful. That's absolutely, and I mean, multi-instrumentalists, you could even talk about, certainly another artist I do have in my collection, not everything, but Prince. I mean, an absolute multi-instrumentalist who could play literally anything you could think of.
Yes. Yes, Prince is a legend. He's definitely a name I would have mentioned in the previous question about having dinner with musicians. And just being able to pick his brain. My goodness gracious, that man was so talented.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, like I said, Rolling Stones, David Bowie, probably another favorite of mine, at least, definitely another, the creativity and the thing that flows out of people. Now, how do you go about, like, when you're kind of composing, a song? Let's say you're composing all together, or we do is it one person writing the songs, or is it more a collaborative effort? Where's some of the inspiration for that come from?
It's a little bit of both. Usually, one or two members of the band will plant a seed in terms of an idea, and essentially we'll just water it with other ideas and see what could transition into another part. And we just kind of let the song grow into itself. Being an instrumental band, that's really difficult, especially when you're involving so many different textures. And the way that we describe ourselves on social media is that we put just 4 adjectives: heavy, quiet, loud, feels. Essentially, and that's essentially what we aim for. And so the composition process really comes down to, it's like, hey, I have a bass line. Our guitar player comes in, I'll play the bass line, he'll figure out an idea that might sound good over that. We'll both present that to our drummer. Our drummer's like, no, that idea is terrible. And so he presents an idea, and then we sort of try to fit maybe the original idea, or maybe it will just go onto its own tangent. Or maybe somewhere down the line in the writing process, we'll circle back to the original idea. It's very cyclical in terms of how we write. That's probably the best way I would describe it. Is it's sort of like a revolving door of ideas where there's an ebb and there's a flow. And there's one thing that we focus on, particularly, again, being an instrumental band, is transitions and having such a dynamic scope and sounding so much larger than life. It's really important to nail those movements. And that's something we really try to hone in on in that writing process, in that cyclical process. Like, if we all latch on to something in the moment where we've presented the idea and it's now organically grown, and we're there, we're sort of in the pocket with what we want creatively, we'll just keep going. We'll keep pushing it. We'll play the same melody for sometimes 10, 15 minutes and see what we can come up with and see where it will just naturally lead us. And sometimes that can lead to, a 3-minute song. Other times it can lead to a 7+ minute song, which is really cool to me. I mean, that's really gratifying as a musician, to sort of have that seed grow and maybe grow into something that you don't expect. It sort of has this sort of butterfly effect, if you will, where if you change one thing, it might influence another thing later down the line in the process. So that's really enjoyable to me, for sure.
Also a good metaphor for life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a good movie too. Really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, checking out a few of your, I would say, more recent works. First of all, I'd be remiss personally if I didn't mention the video that was done. Flighter, I think is the way.
Flickr.
Flickr. Thank you. Flickr.
Yes.
I couldn't even read my own writing. Oh my goodness. But Flickr video. Now, when I saw that, I love the visuals of it. The setting of the woods. I'm guessing an actress that may have been hired for the part for the video. Mm-hmm. The costume kind of moving through, the changing colors, it was a very visceral experience watching that. Could you describe a little bit of that, of the process of making the video and kind of the concept behind it, and putting some of the pieces together?
Absolutely. So, kind of going back even to your last question, the song Flicker, we actually came up with the title before we even started writing the song. The title itself was actually the influence for the musical composition. So I'm told that Flicker is a particular move that can be done in the trading card game Magic the Gathering, which I am not privy to the particular rules, but I am told that it essentially means that you can regenerate your particular card that you may be using. And so the theme of the song essentially was regeneration or rebirth, sort of going through the cycle of life and death, if you will. And so coming up with the concept for the video, we essentially wanted that sort of regeneration, rebirth, regeneration to manifest itself in a person, and see how we could visualize that and have different symbols and have different things sort of manifest within just having a single actress and having a very limited setting. We actually had that video shot in Dayton, Ohio, through a friend of mine, Eric Bluebaum, from the band Maharaja. Shout out to him and his crew out in Dayton. We came up with the concept for that video in probably about 12 hours on a Saturday afternoon. And the following Saturday, everything had been shot within a day. And essentially the theme was, we're going to have this person sort of become something else. And we're going to have some sort of outside force that is ambiguous influence this change. And when the change happens, we want it to be sort of jarring. And we wanted that to sort of flow with the song, because that's essentially how we had written the song, where the song starts off very sort of serene, moves into sort of a mid-tempo sort of, I guess we call it a chorusy section, but I like to think of it sort of as like a meandering kind of figuring out where to go, and then immediately punch to the gut, heavy distortion, reflecting the outside ambiguous influence, and then eventually resolving into a really nice combination of pretty much everything that I just mentioned, where it's heavy, but it's also beautiful and melodic and really textural, and having that visualized through the actress sort of wearing the white garb with the blindfold, as opposed to the garb that she has in the beginning of the video, where she's just walking through the woods like an average person in the fall with leaves and a coat and what have you, and sort of having her transform into this sort of ethereal, angelic, or devilish, I guess you could even say, figure at the end was something that was really, really awesome to see visualized. I would say that we nailed it on the video for sure. And I appreciate all the great things that you had to say about it, because visceral isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind, but then reflecting on it now, it definitely comes across that way for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could definitely feel it when watching it, and of course, you know, I mean, yeah, like you said, you know, angel or devil, it is left up a little bit to interpretation, so it didn't feel like it's not leading you in one direction or another. You know, something's happening, and you know, I'm sure also, you know, this would probably be a better question for maybe the director of the video, but kind of also guiding her through the movements. Did you have any input on that in the video itself, or was it just more, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, the director's
no, we did actually have some influence on that in terms of how we wanted the transition. Again, going back to the compositional process, we wanted to apply that to the visual. So the movements through the woods, sort of having her be still and wondering what's going on here. It even got to a point where I showed the video to some friends before we actually published it, and there were a point they were like, "Did the video freeze? We hear the music keep going, but she's just sitting still." That's exactly what we wanted. We wanted you to kind of wonder what is going on here. Like, we wanted your ears and your eyes to sort of deceive you a bit before paying off with the visuals, and having things like the little Fabergé elephant and the bird and the leaves and the random astral shots that we had spliced in there. I couldn't tell you what those symbols mean. I could tell you what they mean upon watching the video, and what they might mean to me in that sort of viewing of it. And to someone else, it may mean something completely different. And that's what I love about making instrumental music, is that no matter what, it's really just open to interpretation. It's there for you to consume, but it's not in your face with a particular message, if you will, other than the general theme of regeneration, rebirth, etc.
Well, I guess I'm picking up on that a little bit. You know, what do you feel that some of those symbols might mean to you? You know, and I know, like, you understand. You just said, hey, it is very open. But what are some of your takeaways when you're watching it, with your feelings and your interactions?
Oh yeah, for me, it's definitely like I would say that it's almost like ascending to a higher level of being. What that could mean to someone else, for me, that just means sort of literally almost becoming godlike, ethereal, all-knowing, all-understanding, free, if you will. The video starts off with her on a specific path, whereas the end of the video, she's open and she's moving and free-flowing with her white garb that, again, seems like either angelic or demonic, and sort of having that ascent into that what was really powerful for me. And what really had me impressed with the video, honestly, upon seeing the final cut, was just nailing that transition along with the musical composition. It was perfect.
Oh, excellent, excellent, and excellent video. I'm linking to that below, obviously, as well with all the other links. Please check it out. Really well done. And another piece of footage I was kind of checking out a bit before, obviously doing our interview, Summer Wars Live. I think I got the spelling of that one right. And just kind of seeing the live, interaction. That was probably from about roughly 2 years ago. And I guess that's what kind of prompted me with some of the, the live questions. Of course, seeing the energy. What I mean, just having all that energy. First of all, I mean, how do you build up that energy? I mean, it's got to be exhausting to kind of try to build up that energy if you're doing, a show, whether it's 30 people or 500 people. How do you prep yourself for that? How do you prep yourself with your energy and your flow and everything? What are some of your maybe rituals, for lack of a better word?
So yeah, I mean, especially for something like that, where we actually filmed that in the midst of the pandemic. If you watch the video, you'll see that we're all masked throughout the entire performance. We had actually filmed that video, if I'm not mistaken, I believe in April of 2021. So we're actually coming up on 3 years, which is kind of nuts to me that that's the case. But in a sense, that was actually our first show because at the time there were no venues open and hosting shows. And in a sense, there was no way for us to perform. We had just released our EP titled Summer Wars. And so a family friend, or actually a family member, I should say, Shane Fitzgerald and his production house, Pine Street Studios, who just celebrated their 10-year anniversary. Shout out to Pine Street Studios. He and I had coordinated, and we were just like, we can't really do a show at the moment. So how about you come to the studio and you just film a live performance of us just playing through the entire EP. And at the time, I believe we had written another song, which was later to be included on our LP, Through the Dying Light, Crown of Echoes, where essentially we just played the entire EP there for everybody just to kind of get a sense of who we were. Essentially, that was our mission statement as a band. In terms of building up the energy for that, it probably was a little less anxiety ridden than a normal sort of show would be, only because it is a relatively controlled environment. Although given the circumstances with it being a pandemic and what have you, social distancing and sort of guidelines that we did have to follow to keep each other safe, there were those. And there's also the fact that we essentially had one take to nail everything. So being able to do that and have it be as good as it was something that we were really, really happy with. And we did sort of plan out exactly how the order that we were going to play the songs in, where everything was going to be set up. So sort of having that there, it was cool. We could go into it and just attack the entire performance. And, to this day, people still tell us about like that was their first exposure to us. And it's really sort of flattering because that in a sense is kind of my first performance as a bass player. So to sort of have that documented and to have this wonderful reception to it is awesome.
That energy alone, I know just that absolute energy. Just a couple more kind of, general questions and kind of leading back. So we're going to go first with, what was your first record that you remember getting, buying, maybe being given to by somebody? Just that first record that really set you off on your musical journey.
All right. Now, the thing is, when we say record, are we talking about vinyl LPs here, or are we talking about like just...
We could talk about, it could be either vinyl or a CD or any format, vinyl, CD, tape. So just kind of that first exposure, that first, maybe cassette, maybe it was a CD, just something that you were given, you bought, and you go, oh, wow, this is really, just exposing you to a whole wider world. It's just starting you on this whole musical journey.
Absolutely. So this is one of this artist's probably not most celebrated work, but Dangerous by Michael Jackson is one that stuck with me big time. That was probably the first album I'd listened to front to back and could appreciate every element of the music. There was a song on there, I think it was popular at the time. Do you remember the time?
Yes.
That was In Love. Also the title track Dangerous, which was the last track. That was actually my favorite, being, 5-6 years old at the time of it coming out. That's one that definitely stuck with me. And even the imagery of that LP artwork, if you were to pull that up, I mean, it's still to this day very, very provocative, and sort of having that sort of ostentatious presentation. Obviously, Michael Jackson, being who he is, was that essentially, but seeing that embodied in just the artwork and the art itself and the music was really, really moving to me. And to this day, that still holds up to me. I listen to that album at least once a year, every year.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you bring that up because I remember seeing I want to say Moonwalker. I was almost going to say Moonraker, but that's the Roger Moore James Bond film. Moonwalker. I remember seeing that song called "Leave Me Alone" on there. Is that one on that particular album, "Leave Me Alone"?
I can't recall. I think it may be. Mm-hmm. I think it may be, but I believe the most famous song on that record was "Black or White."
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, with the sort of rock guitar intro, and having that sort of plugged into the hook. That was sort of the big one, and the music video. I mean, all of Michael's videos were so cinematic, but that music video in particular was huge for the time. In a time where music videos, to me at this point, going back to the Flickr thing, it's sort of a dying art form where it's hard to sort of see the vision that people have these days, whereas back then it was very clear and distinct, and it was almost like watching a short film. It's great.
Oh yeah. You could. I mean, we could definitely go on about different music videos I can think of off the top of my head for Michael Jackson. If we want to go back to Thriller or something that as I was growing up watching MTV in the early to mid '80s, certainly we could go with the Beatles, for example, to kind of tie it back into the channel a little bit here. The Beatles with something like a Strawberry Fields Forever.
Yes.
That type of very visual video, or even Hard Day's Night, videos from there, or even stuff from the 30s that were musicals, even though they weren't technically music videos, you could view them that way. I remember one in particular. I remember seeing a Cab Calloway video, part of a musical. He's moving his head back and forth, and he's headbanging. Really, he's when you see that clip, you're like, wait, he's headbanging. This is back in 1935-ish, maybe. Full 40, 50 years before you see that in concert with, the 70s and 80s and folks there. So just amazing how it all ties in. And I agree. I mean, it is definitely, there is creativity, but yeah, it can be tough to come across, and especially, especially with, record companies, streaming revenue, everything like that, spending money or not wanting to spend money. That's definitely got to be very tough, especially, especially with commercial aspirations. And just to speak of, what type of future plans do you have? What type of future, if any, more commercial aspirations do you have as far as the band goes, as far as the direction of your music goes?
I mean, we are 100% independent. We do not have a label. We just promote ourselves through our social media and just through our local channels. And somehow our music got streamed over 32,000 times last year in 101 different countries. That's just through the magic of the internet. That's sort of what I chalk it up to. As far as like aspirational things, I mean, I definitely would like to play at some point overseas. I think that would be really cool. It seems that we were sort of building a bit of a European audience, where I know that there's an appreciation for the arts a little bit more so than here in the US, where everything tends to sort of get more commercialized. Whereas over on that side of the Atlantic, everybody, it seems more communal and supportive, and everybody's trying to lift each other up. So I definitely would like to do that eventually at some point, whether it's with this band or just in any project, any endeavor that I partake in. But as far as Lesotho in particular, I mean, we after just putting out this 10-track LP, we're definitely going to take a step back and sort of revamp the process and sort of figure out where our heads are at in terms of new material, which we've already started coming up with. So for me, it's just continuing to create, to be quite honest. I know that that's sort of copping out as an answer, but that's my goal, is to continue to create, continue to share, continue to take opportunities like this to chat with you about, different things, different elements of music, and, sort of bridging two eras together. That this is what I'm here for. This is what I love to do.
No, it's appreciated. In fact, I remember, one of the bands I think I mentioned, not even so much the Beatles, but I remember, I think one of our first conversations, if I'm remembering correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, I asked something about Public Image Limited and kind of that feeling with the Sex Pistols, kind of, okay, they disintegrated, they imploded. John Lydon. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Please don't come after me if you happen to be watching this. He decided, okay, we're going to do Public Image Limited now as sort of the next step, the next process. Particularly the album called Album from the mid 80s, which is a really good one that I love listening to. That's kind of some of the feeling I was getting from, when you were describing some of the music. I don't know how accurate that might be among other things.
I mean, it's definitely an influence. I mean, obviously it's, not a one-to-one sort of translation of it, but yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, for me, when it comes to sort of the creative process, it's important to sort of draw influence from different elements. I can't listen to the same type of music for a period of time. Like I could probably, for example, like today, I spent most of my day listening to Paul McCartney. Went back and listened to Helter Skelter. I Want You, and what have you. I mean, tomorrow, who knows? I'm probably going to go on a hip hop binge or a metal binge or a jazz binge or something like that. Or I might even just go on a kids music binge just because I've been exposed to that recently with my 3-year-old, because some of that stuff is good and it's catchy, and it can influence how I go to create and be like, oh, well, I remember hearing that. It can sort of trigger different synapses in the process. So it's really important to me to draw from all the genres and sort of just take that and make it your own. Take your own interpretation, make it your own. So, like you could tell me that, Tchaikovsky influenced Lesotho, and I would agree with you. Like it's just one of those things where to me, it will always and forever be a totally subjective and internal thing, a deeply personal relationship with the sound. If I always kind of think to myself sometimes, like, if I ever had, like, for some reason or another, was forced to lose all of my senses, but could keep one, the one that I would keep is my hearing, so that I could hear and understand people, obviously, but then also music and be able to feel music and at least have that sort of sensation that I still get from it.
Oh, well, as we're sort of coming to the end, and again, I thank you so much for your time. Just a few wrapping up points. First, Elmo must be a huge rock star then in your house with your 3-year-old. Must be like
Beatles
and Stones all combined,
Absolutely. No, Elmo is quite the musician. I mean, honestly, all the Sesame Street characters. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the NPR Tiny Desk concerts.
Yes. That doesn't Jimmy Fallon also do those Tiny Desk concerts? I think.
I believe so. But the Sesame Street Band actually does have a Tiny Desk concert, and it's great. It's awesome, and they play with some wonderful musicians, and yeah. So definitely check that out, and many other artists too, who are on there. There's all types of bands on there. You'll find everything from punk rock to Sesame Street to jazz to piano concertos. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely enjoy quite a bit of NPR. Besides, it's not just all Beatles, solo Beatles, but of course NPR, and a lot of the musicianship and creativity that goes into something that sounds so simple, but it's not. None of it is, I'm sure. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you kind of one of the final questions before we as we're wrapping things up. No More Lonely Nights by Paul McCartney. It is my absolute favorite song, first of all. My absolute top song of his. I just wanted to kind of get your impressions. I don't know if you had ever heard the song before, and if not, what were some of your impressions and some of your feelings?
So I hate to respond to your question with a question, but was that song, or at least one of the versions of it, included on the one compilation that was released in the mid to late 90s?
No, that was not on the one compilation. That's so this
right,
is
because it's a McCartney solo song.
It's a solo track. Yeah, no,
right.
That's fine. Excuse me. I'd love answering questions like that and going off on another little tangent. I never try to gatekeep with the Beatles, if that makes any sense. So
I get that.
We don't know that. It's like no. Come on, we're all learning together. There's stuff we're learning. So, but to answer your question, no, that's not on the one compilation. That was from the. Give my regards to Broad Street. Here we go. Little plug right there. Both the soundtrack and the film. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your impressions on that. And had you ever heard it before I said that?
So I hadn't heard it. Or at least I thought I did up until you just clarified that for me. So I hadn't heard it and was thinking that the original didn't sound so great, whereas like the 2016, I guess remastered or remixed version sounded so clean and crisp. and the Gilmore solo at the end, it was just so it sounded huge. I was like, what is this? This is like, one of their heavier songs, if you will. My mind was kind of blown, and I had to listen to it a couple of times today to kind of really soak it in and absorb it. Excellent stuff. And
it's
probably the best solo track I've heard from Paul, honestly.
it's all about trying to spread the Broad Street gospel around here. So, and actually, this one I'll show you real quick. It's one of the first ones I got from back in the late '90s. I got it from a store in Maryland. Dance mix right
Nice.
there.
No More Lonely Nights. There it is. Yep.
The back right there, actually, a picture from the film. That's Broad Street Station right there. That actually did exist. There was a real Broad Street up until about, well, the film didn't do so well commercially up until about 1986, I believe, is when they tore it down for another nearby hub over in London. So you know what? Let's go to our final parts as we're wrapping up. So first of all, Cliff, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
A lot of great insight. Wonderful conversation. I literally could keep going for probably another hour or so.
Same. I'm having a lot of fun, man. Thank you.
We obviously have our other commitments. Unfortunately, I don't do this full time yet.
I was going to say yet.
There you go. But where could folks find you? Like what type of, as far as website, as far as social media? Obviously, I'm still going to link to everything that we've said below. But just to give a plug, and also a plug for any type of either future live shows, future projects, things like that. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find our band Lesotho, again, named after the country, pretty much anywhere that you stream music, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, etc. We also do have a Bandcamp where we have merchandise for sale. You can buy a cassette tape of our record, which is called Through the Dying Light. You can also buy a digital version of our EP, our original EP titled Summer Wars, at lesotho.bandcamp.com. I do also play drums in CAZADOR, which is a little bit heavier of a band, more of like a sludgy sort of harsh vocal, but with a little bit of melody type. That's the band I play drums in. You can find us at CAZADOR.bandcamp.com and also in all the streaming services. Our most recent record was called Acceptance and Isolation, written right before the COVID-19 pandemic, ironically enough. And so you can find us there and pretty much anywhere online that you listen to music. As far as commitments, we do have something going on, I believe in the spring. There isn't a date confirmed, but we should be playing Lesotho, that is, somewhere locally in the March to April timeframe. We'll definitely be posting about that on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, etc.
Excellent. And also any new studio work that you plan on doing as far as like a follow-up EP, LP, something like that?
So we are writing. It'll probably be a while. I mean, 10 songs is a lot as we sort of grew to find out. And I think, kind of mutually agreed that we probably won't ever do a 10-song album again, just given the nature of it being instrumental. And even though we did intentionally write everything sort of as a journey, we think that a bit more of a condensed experience, maybe somewhere in the 30 to maybe 35-minute range, might be a little bit more digestible for most. So we're going to take our time doing that. So keep an eye out for that. I would imagine at the soonest, maybe mid to late 2025. CAZADOR, however, we did just complete recording for our newest album this past May at the Bridge Sound and Stage. Our album will be titled Blood Tax, and it should be coming out at some point late 2024. So keep an eye out for that. It is a bit of a stylistic shift from the sludge that I just mentioned to a little bit to something a little bit more progressive. Let's just put it this way: I listened to a lot of Blue Oyster Cult right before recording. That's all I'll say about that. I don't want to spoil too much, just because we're in the midst of a rebrand for that band. So again, Ed, I can't thank you enough for having me. This was really fun. Would be happy to do it again at any time. And it's always good to talk shop and chop it up with you.
Thank you for giving me a little bit of the exclusive here on Call Me Mr. Broadstreet. So again, I'll link to all the socials for Lesotho, obviously also the other bands that you have mentioned. And, just looking forward to talking and also catching up, even during work, after work, that type of thing, as we text and things, in real life, obviously just not on the show here. But Cliff, thank you so much. Check out Lesotho, check out their video for Flickr, especially Flickr. Summer Wars. Again, I'm going to link to all the artists, everything mentioned within this video. Just to wrap it up, I hope everybody's really, enjoying the content. And, I will be back with a new episode of some material from the Fest for Beatles fans, as I'm currently there now, as this is airing, which is a lot of fun, and little bits of little surprises for folks to look out for. And just want to say thank you all for the current subscribers, for the new subscribers. I really do appreciate the support. Cliff, thank you for being on. I appreciate the support as well. You are one of the most amazing hype people. You've definitely gotten me some subscribers. I really do appreciate that.
No, we love the content, man, and it's again, this is all art, and we're suffering for it, and we're sharing it, and a high tide raises all ships. So thank you for doing what you do and giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll see everybody next time. So again, just a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and until next time, everybody, have a good one.